Hello and welcome to episode 58 of the TRUUMAN Podcast, the podcast designed to create a generation of self-defined men. Today, I'm joined by Chris Howe. Chris, thank you so much for being with me. How are you doing today?
Very well, and thank you very much for having me, Lewis. Good man.
Amazing. We'll get into a little bit more about you in a second, but first, Chris, in your own words, what makes you a man?
Good question. I like this question. So there's a few things I'll throw in here, but I'm going to start with one of the, so it probably aligns to my own values actually, is about, I'm going to start with chivalry. I find I get worried and scared that this traditional sort of value is getting a little bit lost in today's society. But carrying bags for a woman, holding a door for a woman, taking care of a woman, I think are all values and traits that every man should have. And I don't believe we should lose sight of this, even with the shift of equality. And there's a big movement around feminism and all those sort of things. And I'm not saying that women can't be empowered. I'm not saying that a woman can't be the breadwinner in a household. But I think those traditional values cannot be lost. And I stand, so if you ask me what makes me a man, that's definitely one of those things. And I think the other part I'd add to this as well, which again is about sort of traditional values that I hold quite dearly. And ultimately, my roots are working class, and I believe firmly that a handshake and a verbal agreement with the whites of the eyes shared between two men is a binding contract. That's it. And I stand by those sort of traditional values being something that makes me a man. How's that?
Awesome. First time in 58 episodes that someone's mentioned chivalry. So
there you go. Then I'm glad something different.
yeah. Surprised that no one has mentioned it. But yeah, interesting nonetheless. So Chris, you've mentioned a little bit about your background and your traditional self, but why don't you tell us a little bit about what it is that you do?
Yeah, of course. So I, as I sit here today, Chris Howe, your results coach. So I now I'm a coach to business leaders and senior execs, business owners, concentrating around four main areas. Effectively, I'm straddling life and business, and this all, and we'll probably get into this, but this all sort of leans its way back into my own experiences and backstory as a director in recruitment, because I spent nearly 25 years working in the recruitment sector at quite a senior level for the last decade. And I look to work with, I'll work with men or women, but actually all of my client base right now for my personal coaching are men. And I work with people around if they are finding that alcohol is getting in the way a little bit now, and then as they've got an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, that's quite a sort of a prevalent niche that I operate in, and I'm qualified to coach people around not necessarily just being alcohol free, but gaining control of an unhealthy relationship with alcohol. Also lifestyle, mindset, and then business. So the whole approach is about, if I can work on the individual in the first instance, I get really laser focused on frustration and stress and overwhelm, and I can sense that in people. That's always the natural starting point that's always my natural starting point. Then, of course, once we've got the individual in a fit state, relationships are in a good place at home. Socially, we're ticking a load of boxes. Then from there, it's about what impact that can then have on business. In short, without getting into too much detail, I'm happy to share, some stories and experiences around that where appropriate. That is me right now.
Yeah, amazing. Well, we're recording this podcast in December. It's actually going to go out in January. So Happy New Year to anyone listening, I guess. But also it's sort of that time of year where I guess business and drink start to mix a little bit as well, where you start to have maybe a bit of a wind down sort of coming to the end of the year, and you start to it becomes very easy to have a drink with someone. So what's sort of the navigation around this time period with your clients? What does that?
It's really interesting. This is like, for the time that we're recording this, as in today, the day, Lewis, this is like so topical you wouldn't believe. The post this morning that I put out on social media, I use LinkedIn quite a lot, is around this. Appreciate we'll be in the new year by the time this is actually published and aired. But people at the point this is aired, I'm expecting people, as I did back in the worst one was sort of Christmas, New Year, 2016 going into 17. I had a really boozy Christmas that year, and literally my hands were bloody shaking on the steering wheel when I was driving to work on the 3rd of January, or the first day back in January anyway. It was awful. So from experience, I know that Christmas can be a real challenging time for people. What I'm trying to educate with people that I work with, and even just general people that read my content, is I'm not sitting here saying don't bother drinking at all, because there's some people that will have a few drinks over Christmas, I'll have a wonderful time with family and friends. Christmas will be what it's meant to be. Tick in a box, tick in a box. There'll be people that will choose to reduce their alcohol intake, or potentially even just go completely dry over the Christmas period, and that's where I can help people to do that. Equally, and unfortunately, right back at the other end of the spectrum, there are going to be people that are going to have a drink and they're going to drink too much. And unfortunately, this is going to end up being, or it will have been because of when it's being aired, and that this will be potentially a period for some people to, forget and regret, which is where I'm trying to really sow a message out into the marketplace for I would say it's inclusivity. There's a big push around a lot of sectors and a lot of industry around having a diverse workforce, having an inclusive workforce, hybrid, flexible working, cultural backgrounds. All of these sort of things are all quite prevalent in a lot of recruitment strategies and a lot of ways that people are looking to diversify their staff base. And just this morning, I'm due to meet a lady. She's she's a people director, head of people director for a business, and I'm due to meet her. And she's actually, as part of their Christmas plans for the staff parties and everything else, has actually put out a questionnaire just to get some feedback on what people would like. And one of those questionnaires is, would you like some alcohol-free drinks available for you? So this isn't just soft drinks and water, a bit of Diet Coke, a bit of Coca-Cola, a bit of Fanta, whatever, a bit of Sprite, whatever it's going to be. Just actual genuine, because the alcohol-free market's amazing now. So actually put that to the team to see if anyone would want those sort of options. And I'm quite confident there will be, because there's such a shift at the moment in terms of people testing the water and drinking less, or even stopping drinking. And the alcohol-free market's so amazing now that that'll happen. And it just struck a chord with me when I read it, because that is, for me, that is the stance that every UK business should and needs to take. I don't necessarily always enforce an opinion. I like to share thoughts. I like to create thought, and I like people to make a decision for themselves. But this is something where I do have quite a strong opinion, which is any business, if there's business leaders watching this now, HR professionals, whoever it is, any business within your staffing structure, within your teams, there are going to be people that are struggling with alcohol, whether that's because they've been addicted in the past, whether that's because they've grown up and their parents were alcoholics, whether that's because they've had close friends that have died, committed suicide from alcohol, whether that is that they've got parents that got divorced because of alcohol. There's so many people that I engage with and talk to that can associate a negative situation with alcohol. So at the moment, the work that I'm doing, and I'm publishing articles on social media, I'll be, by the time this is aired, I'll be just about into a group program with individuals about navigating Christmas and social activity without alcohol needing to be the social crutch. And then we're starting to work on other things like mindset and lifestyle habits and so on, and then goal setting to set them up for 2025. So yeah, it's a hard time of year for people, Lewis. That it's going to be a hard time of year for a lot of people, to be honest.
Yeah, I guess I just want to sort of round this point off, which is, as a business, you want productive people, right? So it's almost,
you might think so.
I mean, obviously, Christmas parties are great, and
of course they are. Yeah,
they're a big thing for people to enjoy, right? And it's a celebration of the year and the success. But they're usually on a Wednesday or a Thursday, and there's still a Friday where you've got to work. And it does baffle me a little bit that there is an element of go loose, if you will, rather than, well, let's have a couple of drinks, let's celebrate, and then we're still a working family, or however you want to look at it from that point of view. And I want you to stay productive, and I want you to be on your sort of A game, I guess.
100%. And I think that this is one of the reasons why I target business owners, business leaders, because I know that they can then have this ripple effect through their teams and people, means that I can actually indirectly impact more people by working with that sort of layer of person.
Yeah.
But I think more and more people are starting to realise that whilst everyone associates fun with alcohol, while everyone associates, celebration and lots of things with alcohol, I think people are starting to now realise through education, through people like myself and other people, I've got a lot of peers in this sort of sector that do similar sort of work to me, are now helping people to understand that actually have a look at what life's like without alcohol and then make a judgment call on everything at that point. Because what I find is even a 30-day, so I call it a tactical break, and even like a 30-day break, that's enough of an eye-opener for people, for them to start latching onto some of the more positive things. I'm calmer with my kids. I'm less ratty with my partner, with my wife. I'm more productive at work. I've got more energy. I'm going to the gym. I'm eating better. I'm sleeping better. And the list keeps going, And all of a sudden people can start to latch onto, well, hang on a minute. So really back to what you'd said about in business, if all of your staff are in that type of place where they're not drinking a great deal of alcohol, there's no other bad habits in the mix either, by the way. By default, you can have a much more productive workforce. I wrote an article in autumn 24 for Your Business magazine, and I published some stats in there. Maybe I can probably just share a link, and maybe we can add it somewhere just so people can have access to it. And that was a sharp sort of article on the cost to UK business, and the numbers are massive. We're talking millions here, and I actually think those numbers are massively, massively underestimated in terms of the cost impact to business, because it's not just sick days, absence days, which I know happen because people will, but they might be badged up as something else.
Yeah.
But then it's just that decrease in productivity. People are just sort of battling the way to get to the end of the day, to get home and through, a real challenging 24 hours. So it's a no-brainer for me, really, that if we come back to, I was talking about the fact that this particular lady that I'm meeting had got, she's put an offer, a questionnaire out to staff to say, would you like to see some alcohol-free options, and what would they be? I think that more and more businesses need to be doing that, because it's not just about, you've got a few things to consider. You've got people that have got a problem and are drinking too much. Yeah? So there's that end of the spectrum. But you've also got people, as I said, I gave you that list of circumstances where people could be scared of alcohol almost. They've got beer fear because they've seen the damage that it's caused to someone nearest and dearest to them. They could have a religious background, which means they don't drink alcohol. So I think as businesses, we need to be more thoughtful from attracting good talent to your business, retaining good talent in your business, having an inclusive workforce, and ultimately, as you've said, making sure that you have a productive workforce, which is really important, isn't it, sir?
For sure. Well, let's go back to 2016, because I imagine that's probably the starting point of you starting to have these thought processes and sort of making these changes. So talk us through that sort of Christmas period and like your decisions and how this sort of all led to this.
So what am I now? I am 48. I'm 49 in February 25. So at this point in time, I'm early 40s, sort of around the 40 mark, early 40s. And it was I attached alcohol to fun. I attached alcohol to social activity. Basically, everything that I did revolved around alcohol. And that will be a familiar story to a lot of people watching and listening to this. I know that for a fact because I have so many conversations about it. So if you win a piece of business, we go and celebrate and we drink. If you have a great day, you go home and have a drink. If it's a party, it's a birthday, it's a wedding, whatever it is, you have a drink. And that's what I was like. And weekends were party time. They were all the way through my 20s and 30s. It was just party time. Now that was now I realise there's quite a bit of ignorance on my part. I genuinely didn't understand what alcohol actually does to your body. I didn't understand it. It's not just a hangover the next day, which a lot of people will sort of laugh our way through. It's not. It's more than that. It's the chemical impact it has on your body. It's how it raises your stress levels. It's how it increases anxiety. It's how it starts to mess around with all your sort of your sats. Your blood pressure, everything. All of it. Your heart rate, your resting heart rate, your heart rate variability. There's all of these things that alcohol significantly impacts in all the wrong way. But I didn't realise that. So I just drank because drinking was fun. It wasn't, I didn't wake up in the morning and start getting a bottle of vodka out or anything like that. I was just every evening. It could be 2 beers, it could be half a bottle of wine, it could be both, it could be a bit more. And weekends, like I say, it was just party central. And the job I had in recruitment, it was a senior job, director, clients that were spending tens of millions of pounds with the business and therefore expected, rightly so, a piece of me. But some of those relationships were hard. There were challenges at times with the service to some of those contracts because it's just I'm dealing with people, and I wasn't dealing with that stress particularly well. I started to drink a bit more to de-stress in inverted commas, and I know now that it does exactly. I have the opposite now. If I'm ever stressed, I'd never even consider having a drink of alcohol because the two just do not mix whatsoever. So I came out of this Christmas in 16, and in 2017, I'm driving to work, 3rd, 4th of January, whatever it was that year, and I could see me bloody, my hands were sort of shaking on the steering wheel. I was like, oh my God, that's horrendous. It's terrible. And then during that year, I started to become a little bit sober curious. I engaged with a coach and started to learn a little bit more about what was going on and realise that, okay, right. I know some of these feelings I'm getting, the anxiety, the stress, even sometimes bloody getting a bit of a sweat on and stuff in pressurised situations. I knew in my heart of hearts it was linking back to alcohol. So then it was 30th of October 2017, after a bit of merry dancing and denial, because someone that drinks relatively regularly doesn't want to be told they're drinking too much, doesn't really want to own up to the fact they're drinking too much. They have to make their own decision.
Well, sort of on that, I guess, is the idea around, I guess, gambling, the adverts are like, when the fun stops, stop, right?
Yes.
But you're drinking, and a lot of people, like you say, it's social, you're having fun. There's no harm in inverted commas being caused. Do you think that's a big element to this as well?
Yeah, I think that. Crikey, I was one of my clients yesterday who he went through a real problem with gambling as well, actually. So I think that all links back to the same thing. There'll be some trauma from the past and from childhood and whatever else. But yeah, I think with alcohol, there is an automatic association that it's fun. Exactly that. And I think the problem with alcohol is it's not very easy unless you're tracking things like I wear like one of these Whoop watches, for example. Unless if you're tracking things, you will see the impact that alcohol is having on your body. Now, back in the day when I didn't have any wearable when I was wondering what was going on with me. So with the fun, when the fun stops. I use that quote quite a lot myself. I think where the fun stops is when you start to realise that the consequence of drinking is outweighing the perceived fun that you're getting. So that fuzziness after a few beers, actually, when you wake up in the morning, you can't remember most of the evening. You realise you've been a bit of a dickhead, and people are actually texting you in the morning to say something along those lines. You feel anxious, you're regretful, you're feeling like absolute shit for a day, snappy and ratty with the missus and the kids. It takes you probably another 2 or 3 days to start feeling right again. And then chances are you might start, I'm okay now, so I'll have another beer. Yeah. It's that's the bit that I really channel into with my clients is we've got to really dig into, first of all, let's dig into the consequence, the negative side of the aftermath of alcohol.
Yeah.
We cross-reference that against the positives. And then by taking a tactical break, which is something I work on a lot with a lot of clients, is then let's start touching and feeling some of these positive things. And then my work then revolves around all of those things to start doing the headspace work to get someone to start really start viewing things a little bit differently. That's what I'd say.
Yeah. So you look at these like tactical breaks. So we've got like Sober October that's just been, Dry January, the classic one. A lot of people who are sober sort of say it's a dry January that got out of hand. That seems to be the only time where it's acceptable to be on one of these tactical breaks. But when you're dealing with sort of a client or someone that might want to do one now, there's a lot of cultural sort of pressure to drink. It seems to be the only drug that people say, oh, come on, it's just one or whatever. So how do you like, no one says, oh, you're not doing any cocaine tonight, you're a loser. I mean, some people do, but like,
I get your point completely. It's the one drug that people question why you're not having it rather than why you are. Exactly. There's a bit of work you've got to do there. Yes, you're right. The marketeers, a bit like the marketing in the alcohol world, is fantastic. Makes there's a Ukrainian. I forgot the name of it. There's a Ukrainian vodka that looks like if you drink it, then you're a proper man. By the way, the way they advertise it is, you're a gladiator if you drink that. I'm like, well, that's not really the case, is it? But anyway, that's drifting off a little bit. But yes, you've got your dry January, your sober October, and they're brilliant initiatives. They're great. They're probably quite harming to the hospitality industry, particularly January, because it does harm that sector because people stop going out. What I think it needs to be is a alcohol-free January. So actually, still carry on going out and go and have some fun, but you don't have the full fat Guinness. You can have the Guinness Zero, for example. So there's work you've got to do around that. First and foremost, as an individual, if you recognise you're drinking too much and something's got to give, that's the first part, acknowledging that, and then, deciding where you're going to go for support and help, whether it's working with somebody like me, so sort of, with the sort of higher ticket, sort of one-to-one coach, or there's communities you can dive into, Alcohol Anonymous, there's all sorts of places you can go. But then it's about having a plan. This is really important. You've got to have a game face on. You've got to be committed to the reasons why you're doing it. And a lot of the time that will boil down to people being regretful on how they're treating the kids and speaking to the missus and feeling at work. And, I've got one of my clients, and obviously there'll be no names mentioned, as I've drawn some examples. His anxiety after a drink is the worst that I've ever known somebody have, in terms of not going into the office, in terms of cancelling meetings, just in terms of just hiding away basically for a day or two because he just cannot face anyone because of his anxiety. So you've got to have a plan in terms of, well, what's my elevator pitch? What am I telling people the reasons why I'm doing it? And that can vary. Mine was I'm just doing a bit of a challenge, and we're just going to do myself sort of 30 days or so alcohol free just to give it a go. I feel like I need a break from drinking. Other clients will use medical reasons. One, his blood pressure genuinely was high, and I knew he would shave probably 10 to 15% off by getting rid of alcohol, and he actually reduced it by 13%. So I wasn't a million miles away. But it's about having your spiel, your elevator pitch on why, because you will get questioned by people that, you will get questioned. Oh, just have one, like you said, just have one. Come on, don't be boring. 1 or 2 won't hurt. I still get it now if I go out and I'm just drinking alcohol-free stuff, So you've got to have a plan and a pitch in terms of why you're doing it. And then the plan is then, what are you drinking? Because the last thing you want to be in a position of is you go to a bar, you thought you were going to have an alcohol-free beer. They've only got Beck's Blue, which is, as far as I'm concerned, tastes like rat's piddle.
Yeah,
and yeah, it's horrible. It's horrible. And then someone puts a pint in your hand, and before you know it, you're drinking it, like, shit, I've got caught out. So you've got to be a little bit careful and sort of pre-plan the situation. A lot of the time with clients, and I've done it myself, just be the nominated driver. There's another barrier to people trying to encourage you to drink. And actually have an exit plan. Have an exit plan that if things are getting a bit too much and you're committed to not drinking, because it is hot, the social side of not drinking alcohol, and that's what you've always done, that's probably one of the biggest hurdles to overcome. And a lot of that is about your own self-esteem and your own inner confidence. It's actually what you a lot of the time you drink just to please others, almost, really. So it's having a plan, making sure you've got your spiel ready, and if you need the sharp harp, as it was called once upon a time, you need that early exit plan. Be the driver, plan to leave. Because what happens when everyone's drinking? There comes a peak, doesn't there? And it's quite fun. We go up the hill, with 3 or 4 beers in, for example, and that's actually arguably the bit that feels fun. And then the 5, 6, 7, and then we're over the peak, and it just starts to get a bit messy normally, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So it's finding where peak is, and then just planning. That's what I do. Is just I plan my exit at that point. So I've enjoyed all the fun. I go home, good night's kit, wake up with a fresh head, and then crack on with my day the next day. So
yeah, it's an interesting one for sure. I'm 140-ish days sober now.
nice,
I'm
good stuff.
umming and ahhing what my Christmas looks like.
Yeah.
Whether I'm going to have a drink or not, and it's sort of a decision that I'm making now. But there's different elements to it in that regards. I guess linking it back to the sort of the theme of this podcast, which is obviously men's mental health and stuff like that.
Yes.
There's a couple of things I want to sort of say. So the first thing is like some own personal stories. So I can recall two occasions where I drank during where my mental health was arguably at its worst, and I was erratic, I was scary, I was potentially harmful to myself on the night out, both times. And the morning after was the worst anxiety that I could ever describe happening. And a number of things happened in those days after, not because of the drink, but I think they were sort of magnified from the anxiety. So like when you received bad news on those days, for example, it made the whole situation a hell of a lot worse, is that side of it. So I just wanted to share that because I felt like it's a story that I have, and I think it's semi-useful for people. Who knows?
I think it's beyond semi-useful. I think you've probably underread that a little bit there, to be honest with you. I think that you've just got me thinking, because I've sort of done some professionally recorded videos, and one of them is about alcohol and your mental health, because a lot of people, I want to let me talk about this, because I think you just struck a really good point there, and I appreciate that the mantra of this whole thing is about men's mental health. Is a lot of people use alcohol to suppress, numb, whatever word, negative emotions, so we de-stress.
Yeah.
We're feeling a little bit flat, a little bit low. Well, a drink's going to pick me up. The reality is alcohol is a depressant. You put it in the same category as heroin when it comes to what it actually is. It's a depressant. And using alcohol as a means to numb the pain, de-stress, you're sad, you feel lonely, you feel sad, all of those emotions that we can all attach ourselves to. Using alcohol as some form of medicine, again, with those emotions, you are on a slippery slope. So if anyone listening to this, watching this, is in that place, definitely hold your hand up. You can message me on LinkedIn if you want. To message Lewis, whatever. And I'm not. That's the sales pitch. That's just I'm happy to help. But if you're in a position that you are using alcohol because you feel flat, sad, depressed, overwhelmed, burnt out, stressed, lonely, whatever it is, you need to raise a red flag, because that's a vicious cycle, and that's actually what I always describe it when I talk on my post. That's a bit of a slippery slope, that, to be honest. So I think you raising that, Lewis, is bang on. And the thing is, can I ask you a question on that?
Yeah, sure.
So where at the time, did you know that alcohol was making that whole anxiety really bad? Did you understand that at that point in time, or was it after?
Yeah, so I've never been a massive drinker since uni. So like, I'm the generation that alcohol was the sponsor of my university boat club. So like, I can drink for sure. But after uni, I was never a massive drinker. So it was quite rare for me to drink. But when I did drink, I would drink hard. Mm-hmm. So yes is the short answer. I was aware that the anxiety had come from the alcohol. And one of my biggest concerns for me, it wasn't necessarily the day before. It was the fact that I was drinking so excessively. I was putting myself and the people that I was with and the people that I was, to use your original example as like traditional masculinity, the people that I was going to be protecting on a night out, I was putting them in jeopardy because I was so loose with it. It was just, I'm just going to consume as much as physically possible. And then obviously it was obvious that the anxiety and the stress and all of that had come from the hangover that was one hell of a hangover.
Yeah, I can imagine. I think because when I was because the job was a stressful job, I had an ongoing level of stress, and I normalised it.
Yeah,
I normalised it, thinking that that's just the way it is in the job I'm doing, only to unravel and remove alcohol. And I was completely and utterly sober for 2.5 years. And when I unravelled that, moved the mist of alcohol out the way, I thought, that's not there anymore. It's not like it was. I'm not saying all of a sudden you never stress or you never get anxious again, because that's bullshit. Because of course you do, but you can handle it and deal with it better. So that was a good point, mate. That, because I think that a lot of people do use alcohol for suppressing negative emotions, and it's pretty dangerous, that is, to be honest.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's it's the common thing that people do. It's to go sort of deeper into the men's psyche. It's one of the destructive things that the men do from a mental health point of view. I look at suicide and drug misuse and alcohol misuse as the same thing. One's external, one's internal. And if you're abusing those things, then you're projecting your mental health through those vices. I mean, sexual assault and violence against men and women sort of create this final five of emotions that are linked to men and their mental health, if from the research that I've been doing, for sure. But yeah, it's definitely not one for doing when you're as a suppressant, for sure. It's not the way forward. The other side of the coin, though, is obviously the loneliness side. So we spoke about it briefly, and we spoke about the non-alcoholic options, and also the peer pressure of, I'll just have one, mate. Are there any other tools that you can think of for guys going out for a night out with the lads that they would normally drink with when they want to take a break, or they've decided that alcohol isn't for them anymore? So
the first thing is just have some self-respect. Yeah, have some self-respect, because once you've got some self-respect, once you respect yourself, others will do the same. That's the first thing. If you're choosing not to drink alcohol on a night out, I'm all right to swear, aren't I, on this one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. I thought so, but
you've got a few, so it's all right.
Yeah. Just like, you need to fuck everybody else, right? Yeah. Forget what they think or have to say. If you've taken a decision that I'm going to have a break from alcohol, I'm not drinking, and my reasons are, I need to reduce my stress, I've put on a load of weight, I feel like shit, I keep being a dickhead with my wife, my kids think I'm an absolute arsehole because I'm snapping at them all the time, that is why I'm not drinking alcohol. Fuck me. Anyone that challenges those sort of reasons for not drinking, if these are so-called friends, then I'd start to question the friendship, to be honest with you. I'm super lucky. I'm still friends with all of my mates. I was out with them at the weekend for a curry, alcohol-free beers for me. Sound, so I'm lucky. But I know a lot of people that end up churning friends because actually the friendship group is just geared around booze and other stuff that often comes with having a load of booze with a group of lads, the recreational drugs, the cocaine you mentioned earlier. So the first thing is, you've got to have some self-respect. That's really important. The second thing, and this was applicable to me, okay, this is particularly in a male-dominated environment. A lot of groups of men, you'll have one or two alpha males, where you'll have the leaders of the pack.
Yeah.
That's quite normal in our world, isn't it? And I had one of my mates, always been that way. Always been that way. He's the strongest, he's the fastest, he's the fittest. He's just one of them lads, good as gold. Like, he was out on Saturday, just good as gold. But I knew that if I didn't get him in the right frame of mind, he could quite easily start to mock what I'm doing, and it will be easy for some of the others to follow. And this is all potential. This is me in the back of my head thinking, I need to get rid of some risk here to make this as comfortable as I can. So I picked him off. I actually went and met him on his own, just me and him, because face to face on his own, there's no bravado then. You're just chit-chatting away like proper good mates that you are. He's not trying to show off to other people. And he's loosened up a lot now anyway, to be fair. But he was just, when we were younger, he was murder. And then as the years have gone by, he's chilled out a little bit. But I picked him off on his own. Now, once I'd got him on my side, I knew if anyone did have a little bit of a swipe and a bit of a prod and a mock, he wouldn't jump on that bandwagon. You know what it's like with lads and banter. Yeah. Once they've got someone in the, once someone's had a little bloody slap, then everyone else has a little, it's just one of them things that blokes do, isn't it, So by picking him off, I knew then if anyone else said anything, I'd got him actually already.
Yeah.
He got my back. So therefore I knew that would shift the dynamic of any potential, pecking I got. And to be fair, little bit of go on, have one, what you doing that for? My alter ego is called Bazza. So Bazza coming out tonight. Bazza isn't coming out tonight, no. And then over time, over the years, they've got used to the fact that, I do have a drink every now and again. It's like I don't drink at all anymore.
Yeah.
But I prefer not doing, if I'm being brutally honest, And so there's some important things there. Self-respect, pick off the stronger characters independently of everybody else. And as I've said, just know your reasons why. And when you start to look at genuine reasons why you're looking to reframe and address an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, there will be some really impactful, meaningful things that you're going to list off. They're all different for everybody, but there's always going to be a common theme. So those are probably, and we've talked about the strategy when you're out and stuff as well. So those are the sort of things that I'd suggest. And if it really needs it, pick off everybody individually. Have that little one-to-one with everybody, a bit of respect for them because you're telling them personally rather than as a group. Get them on side, get them to understand the reasons why. And if they're good mates and you've told them your reasons why, they're not going to give you a load of shit for it. And if they do, you've got to start asking the question around the relationship. That's definitely what I'd say.
I think that's really good advice. I think a lot of people would be overthinking it, would be thinking all of these worst case scenarios. No one's going to be my mate anymore. Everyone's going to be taking the piss out of me. Mm-hmm. Like I can't go out, etc., etc. I think that's really solid, useful. Honestly, never heard it. Great advice for people that are a little bit skeptical and have grown up with essentially drinking buddies, but they are really their friends. Deep down, they have that.
Do you know what else I'd say as well? And this I want this to be really helpful for people that haven't maybe. I've built this confidence, so I'm like, honestly, if somebody says you're not drinking, it almost. I thought I'm actually going to turn. I'm going to be in control of this conversation now.
Yeah,
and I'm going to make you feel like you wish you'd never asked that question now, without being a dick or anything like that. But the other thing to think about when you've got these situations is just making sure that so we've picked everybody off, we've communicated everything, but what you'll find, and I love this is something that there's almost there's a slight smugness. You might have experienced this. Someone asks, you having a drink? No. Why? Here's your spiel. Okay. Just have one. No. You're boring. No. Okay. And what you'll find is there'll be people where you start to see a genuine curiosity, and I can see them thinking, and I can see them really wanting, with a curiosity to understand why I'm doing it and how I'm getting on with it and what problems I've had and is it good and how does it feel? Because actually they recognise that they drink too much. They've just not got themselves in a place or even been brave enough to make the decision that I need to get on top of this now. So a lot of people just wouldn't have a clue how to do it. It feels alien to go out and not drink. So that, and when you start to get that, where people are, you can see that you're almost inspiring people because of what you've done. That's a really, really nice feeling. And the best feeling is the next morning when, the messages are going around the WhatsApp. I had it on Sunday morning. They didn't get in until 3. Sick emojis. They're all hanging. I was taking my lads to football, right as rain. Bit tired, don't get me wrong, because it was a late night, but right as rain. And it's those moments what you would need to grab a hold of, because that's the positives that start to make this whole thing of not drinking alcohol.
I think that level, there's almost a level of enviness that people sort of have. I think one thing that we forget is that we hang around with people that we're very similar to. Mm-hmm. So if you're having this thought process, they've probably had that thought process too, right? Like it's even if you've been friends for years, you're still going to have similar thoughts. There's a reason that you're with those people and that they're your friends and you can get on with them. I think you just hold your ground. And I think one thing that I would also suggest is make sure you go out and do what you were going to do, because that's a barrier that you need to get over. And I think that's what's taken me from 30 days or just because it's easy to avoid everyone for 30 days, right? Just
it is. I think
that's what's taken me from 30 days to, like I say, 140 plus, is that I went out and I did things that I went to like a jazz festival and stuff like this that I would normally drink at. And you have those conversations, and I think that's where you really start to build that self-respect and start to lean on that why. But I will say this, I did go and play golf, and it was with a couple of guys that I didn't know and a friend. And we went into the clubhouse after, and they said, "Oh, what are you drinking?" And I said, "Oh, let me see what they've got, non-alcoholic." So this is my call to arms to all hospitality. They had Beck's Blue and non-alcoholic Copperberg, and those are the worst two. Ring your supplier and have a proper conversation about non-alcoholic options. If you've only got Beck's Blue and fizzy Ribena, you're not accommodating people for that whatsoever. So I ended up with a Pepsi, which for me is where the awkwardness comes in, because everyone's got a pint and you're there with your little Pepsi cup.
Yeah, and it can be awkward. I mean, I've sat there with like an orange and passion fruit J2O, like, so, let's be honest, not the most manly of drinks in inverted commas, but yeah, I'm with you on Beck's Blue and I'm with you on that Copperberg stuff's horrible. So yeah, there's loads more to get into with this, because there's a lot more science, there's a lot more things that you need to consider. But I think we've touched on some good stuff there, and hopefully things that people can maybe start thinking about and potentially applying. But that confidence, that self-respect does take a little bit of time to fine-tune, I would say. And I've always said, this is, and I sort of stand by this, the best experience you can give yourself when going through your own alcohol-free process, whatever it looks like. So I did 2.5 years completely sober, not even an alcohol-free beer, nothing. And I went on holiday to birthdays and weddings and in Christmas and New Year and all that stuff twice round the year. And I think having those experiences and appreciating those experiences without getting pissed all the time really, really helps in terms of that long-term plan with alcohol. Are you going to drip feed it back in? No, maybe, don't know, but what you can always then do is you've got that experience of knowing that not only can you go out and do anything that you do with drink, without drink, but also you can enjoy it as well. And I think that's the bit that I feel you need to experience to really then hit home and do all that. This is where all the sort of behavioural changes and the mindset changes happen, is that you experience having just fantastic fun without being pissed, So
no, it's so true. And I guess just to sort of round off everything that you do, this is sort of like level one, right? This is once you've got that self-respect, that self-discipline, you've essentially leveled up, and the world's your oyster, I guess.
100%, mate. Yeah, 100%. I think, because alcohol's like my sort of niche, that is the starting point. Because if you've got a duff relationship with alcohol, looking at lifestyle habits, and your mindset, and then business, well, you've got to tidy that up first. But once you've got, I always say to clients, once we've done a bit of work on alcohol, if I know, I was with a client yesterday, great client, just looking to renewing sort of a deal at the moment going into next year, and he was struggling a little bit at the start, and I was a little bit concerned as to where we were going to get to be honest, if I'm being really honest.
Yeah.
Never told him that at the time, but I had this honest conversation with him yesterday. But he's nailing it now, and he recognises how he's functioning so much better without loading himself up with a load of alcohol. So what we're doing is we sort of, when I've got to that point, let's just park alcohol, because otherwise we always talk about alcohol. Let's park alcohol and push that back. Let's leave that there. And now let's start revisiting some other stuff where we can start to really accelerate your growth and development and so on. So, and that's where the exciting stuff starts, really, but you can only really get it done properly once you've sorted alcohol out, is what I say. That's my stance.
Amazing. Well, I would love to hear your thoughts. Well, as you sort of mentioned at the beginning with in your answer to the first question, your traditional sort of views as a man. In your opinion, where are you seeing sort of the self-development, the men's mental health space? What are you seeing that's good, and what do you want to see more of?
So what is good is there is a significant shift in men being able to and being accepting of and being okay with being vulnerable. Because as men, I've locked into traditional values earlier at the start of the conversation. Traditionally, that's not what men do. Yeah, we stiff up a lip, crack on, dig deep, just get it sorted. We just have to crack on, don't we? That's basically what we've always been taught. So what I'm loving, there's a lot of groups which are encouraging men to come together and talk. I went on an all men's retreat in 2024. That was an immersive sort of experience where people were sharing some very, very, very personal, private, and quite vulnerable stuff. Everyone, Yeah. And those sort of environments are very, very empowering for men, it's not something we'd normally done. So long may that continue. So that's what I like, what I'm enjoying seeing. In terms of what I'm not enjoying seeing, I guess we just need to see more of it. We just need to see more men becoming more comfortable and accepting that just being vulnerable and admitting that you're struggling a little bit, or admitting that you need a bit of help. I think the more men that can do that, well, of course, this men's well-being sector and industry is going to grow like Billy-O, which is brilliant, and obviously someone that's functioning in it now, amazing. But I think that the impact that will have on relationships and business and wealth, I just think that the more that men immerse themselves in this new wave, this new trend of just, wanting to be better, and understanding that it's okay to, that you might have a few vulnerabilities and shed the odd tear here and there. Great, because I just think the ripple effect and the implications on the wider world, and as I say, family and business, I think are going to be so positive that I guess we just want to see more of it, really,
Yeah. Just a quick question on that. Ever since you stopped drinking, or the first time that you stopped drinking, did you see an increase in those types of conversations with your friends?
What do you mean? So like them asking me about how I did it, and
no, more on. So I guess it sort of ties into it. Having a curiosity around being sober is arguably vulnerable, right? And it's starting to look at your mental health.
100%.
Was that a Kickstarter? Have you had deeper and more vulnerable conversations with your friends when alcohol has been sort of reduced and removed?
Yeah. So I think that's really because there's quite a bit to go up there. So I think removing alcohol does allow you to settle into the real, proper, true emotional you. Yeah. That isn't to say all of a sudden I've just turned into some gushing man, because I haven't. That isn't what's happened. But you can sit and rest in the true you and not the avatar caricature you that's getting pissed all the time. And then with friends and people and colleagues, obviously, in the work that I do now, of course, I have quite vulnerable conversations with people. My content, if you look at any of it, I share pretty much most stuff. So it's all out there for people to learn, to know and understand, to help them. And then with friends, the conversations are, I think what happens, and this isn't just alcohol, this can be drugs, this can be gambling, it can be sugar, it can be binge eating, whatever it is. I think when people that care about you can see that you've dug yourself out of a bit of a hole to be better and improve, and for all the reasons that I've been talking about, family and relationships and kids and wives and all that stuff, I believe that whether they tell you or not, I believe that you score respect marks from people for it, whether they want to say that to you or not. And most of my mates have said, fair play for what you've done, and I'm a better person for it. My kids recognise it. They're around someone that isn't getting drunk all the time. They hear me on these sort of calls. They hear me, talking about things. They read some of the stuff I write. So I think by default that just means that people around me and the job I do now are just comfortable opening up. I do find that, as I am a coach and people know what I'm all about.
Yeah,
I do find that people just naturally just are quite happy to start opening up a little bit, which I quite like, to be honest.
Amazing. Chris, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I could speak to you for hours and hours and hours, which I hope we will do in the future. But I will leave the final thoughts with yourself. Let people know where they can find you if they want to find out more.
Yeah, perfect. Appreciate that, Lewis. Thanks very much, man. I've enjoyed the conversation as well, mate. I can yap about this all day long, so it's quite an easy topic for me. So yeah, to find me, I do a lot of work on LinkedIn. So Chris Howe, Howe, on LinkedIn. Website, www.yourresultscoach.co.uk. And on there, it's a simple, informative website, tells you what I do, and it's got the contact details on there. Email, book a call. So I'm pretty accessible and contactable. So if anyone... So top end, anyone's thinking, do you know what, I'm in the market for a coach, I like the look of Chris, I'd like a chat, then contact me and we'll arrange a discovery call, no problem whatsoever. If anyone that's been watching this this podcast and has got any questions, if you just quote that you've watched this podcast with Lewis and I and make contact with me, then I'm happy to have some conversation and just share some tips if that's what I need to do, just to help.